Facial recognition is coming. It's already here. Last year there was a lawsuit, but I bet you didn't hear about it. In 2022, James Luth, a man of Illinois, took a number of companies to court over facial recognition and database storage of facial recognition data. People who were taken to court included companies such as Walmart, Home Depot, Best Buy, Kohl's, and AT&T. The suit reached a settlement, and some companies like Facebook actually had to pay out money, $550 million. But here's what the suit claims, all right? This is going to get really crazy. Walmart stores in Illinois are outfitted with cameras and advanced video surveillance systems that, unbeknownst to the customers, collect, possess, or otherwise obtain biometric data. In addition, Walmart uses the software provided by Clearview AI Incorporated to match facial scans taken in its Illinois stores with billions of facial scans maintained within Clearview's massive facial recognition database. Guys, are you looking at this? This is insane. Billions of people are already in this system's database, Clearview. And what's the goal of Clearview? Well, here's what it says on their website. Clearview's AI investigative platform allows law enforcement to rapidly generate leads to help identify suspects, witnesses, and victims to close cases faster. All right. Well, interesting. Now, there's a lot of stuff happening with this within this space, and in fact, this lawsuit was actually dismissed by a federal judge, and so it was basically buried. And the legality of using camera and AI is something that is currently being looked at with great scrutiny by real vocal advocates of freedom, but it's also being looked with great interest from private companies who are facing an insane amount of crime and theft within their doors. Walmart is considering closing a number of stores because they can't contain the theft, including one, actually the closest one to my house is closing, and it's what's being referenced is the amount of shoplifting and the amount of ongoing theft at that location. It's pretty off the rails, honestly. The eyewitness testimony of people who were interviewed for the news story talk about people just walking right out of the store with merchandise, and the store had hired multiple police officers to actually be on site, and they were unable to contain the problem. About 3 police calls per day on average out of that site. It's just, man, what a sad deal. And people were saying about this Walmart, they were saying, the people who are going to suffer the most here are people who can't afford to drive to the next Walmart or whatever. The people who are walking to this store are the ones who are really losing out. And a number of stores have been closing, Best Buy stores, Target stores, because we can't control the theft issue. Well, this facial recognition technology really comes as an antidote to a widespread problem then. And from the company's perspective, there's a lot of financial gain to be had by knowing who's walking in the door and knowing if they're in, a person of interest, and being able to know that before they leave the store and kind of watch that person throughout the store as well. I guarantee AI tools exist to do this. And I know that because I have a friend who was arrested at a Walmart. Should have started with that little bit of information. Friend who was arrested at a Walmart in the year 2011. Okay? 2011, that was 12 years ago. The facial recognition technology picked out his face. It matched it to a warrant list, and police arrived at the Walmart and arrested him. If you think that the technology has gone backwards in the last 12 years, you're wrong. It's gone forwards. They now know what license plate of the car that the person who drives to the Walmart has. They watch the person throughout the store. They are able to use, this is not just rocket science, guys. This exists, and you can find this is verifiable online. There is a software that can track somebody based on their clothing as they walk throughout. It already exists on the commercial scale in the consumer space within the drones that you can buy. You can buy drones that have all this technology on them. So what's the deal? I mean, why is all of this underneath the surface? Well, Americans don't like being surveilled, okay? Surprise, surprise. We don't. We like freedom. We like knowing what's happening with our data. And that's why this one went to court. But this technology is going to change the way that we all live and work and operate. And right now it's going into the commercial space first. You know, early adopters of this technology are these companies who have a lot of money to lose. Companies like Best Buy, of course. You don't want people walking out of there with phones and whatnot. And your big box stores like this. Makes a lot of sense. But the companies are probably going to argue that we are so badly hit right now by theft because of the economy, because of lots of other factors, that we can't afford to not have this AI technology on our side. That's what they're going to say. And they're likely, based on the throwing out of this lawsuit, likely going to get that permission to continue to use these databases. And they're going to say something like, in conjunction with local law enforcement, you know, and be executing on that law enforcement on a very small scale now. The problem is, and here's where I think we're going to see some future development, these companies cannot act with absolute certainty that this person in the store is actually this person on the database, even though they have a very high likelihood of being correct about it. As that facial recognition data is uploaded to the servers and it matches this, you know, face that's stored in the servers, again, billions of faces are already stored. There's a little bit of a margin of error. The computer cannot be 100% certain. And this is already an issue in China, where they have a social credit system that's based on surveillance. The computers are watching the citizens going about their day, and they're awarding social credit based on if they did the right thing or not. But even those computers are not acting with a perfect margin of error. There's still a little bit of an oopsie that sometimes the computer gets it wrong. That is going to be the next thing to go. They will absolutely try to eliminate that margin of error so that the computer gets it right every time, and that the computer knows exactly who it is who's in the store without a margin of error, so that it can actually act decisively and give the correct information to law enforcement and execute on the vision, which is a more secure place to get your groceries. Wow. So how do you eliminate the margin of error? Very, very simple. All this technology exists. My guess would be some kind of ultraviolet ink. Ultraviolet ink is fluorescent, and it only fluoresces with the correct lighting. But I imagine it is all invisible, and infrared is also invisible. There's a lot of non-visible on the spectrum. We can see within the visible spectrum, but there's a lot of invisible in the spectrum as well. My guess would be a rollout of some kind of mark. And not only because I'm a believer in Revelation 13, but I think it actually makes the most practical sense. Your face is getting scanned when you're walking the store. They need to be sure you are who you say you are. And so there's this invisible mark that can be seen by the computer. And all of a sudden, you're verifiable. It's got the ability to know that this person walking about is the person in the database, and there's certainty. There's not a margin of error, especially if the application of these marks is done by, a third party who's very trustworthy. If the third party is the one who's verifying the database, well, of course you'd be able to trust it, right? But imagine that you were a Bible-believing Christian and something like this came about. Something like this happened where, there was such a security concern and such a need for security in a modern society that they came and said, we need everybody to have this, or else you can't shop at the store. And, the Walmart is the first to go, and then, the Target and the Best Buy and the Home Depot. I'm speculating here, but just imagine that all of those stores all of a sudden denied entry to people who refused that system. And I mean, it's already happening to some extent without our permission. The lawsuit kind of shows that. But what happens when you can't shop at Walmart anymore? What happens when you can't shop for groceries anymore? What do you do then? Life gets pretty tough pretty quick. And Revelation 13:16 talks about the image of the first beast and the second beast kind of working in conjunction. Check out my video on that if you want. But verse 16, it forced all people, great and small, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hands or on their foreheads, so that they could not buy or sell unless they had the mark, which is the name of the beast or the number of its name. So whether somebody has an implantable RFID chip and they walk in the store and then boop, the machine knows you're there, or if it's using a facial recognition scan, if that's the preferred way, it will know exactly who is there. And consider for a minute the Amazon store that just came to be, where you have your phone in your hand and you tap it at the entry to the store, and all of a sudden you are shopping. It knows you're shopping. The Amazon store knows you're shopping. You go through the store, everything you pick up, you just put it in your cart, you walk out of the store. There's no register, there's nothing. You just walk right out, because every single thing you've put into the cart has been RFID tagged and RFID tracked, and as you passed through the exit of the store, all of those codes are received by the computer and your Amazon account is charged. It's pretty incredible technology, and it's already available for Amazon users in those zip codes where this exists. But all of these vulnerabilities will be seen as too expensive for the modern business. And eventually these companies are going to have to do something drastic. So again, back to the rollout. Americans love their freedom. They would never go for something like this. Yes, I agree, 100%. But companies would go for something like this. They're actually going for something like this to the extent that they're being sued. So that's the next stage. Then following stage after that is that local governments will say, I think that this is good. So, I mean, state governments here, Illinois has some laws that probably will need to change before some of this stuff happens. But I think state governments will say, hey, we do value having these companies in our neighborhoods, and it is important for them to be profitable, and it is important to control theft. And so therefore we are going to allow these things within these regions. But then I think more national rollouts will happen, where it's now nationally acceptable for these large AI companies to exist and to have these databases. And then final stage, internationally verifiable databases. I don't know if you maybe have seen this, but there's already the ability to check in for your flight with your face on Delta flights. I was just at the airport, and you look at the thing and it is able to verify you as you walk past the computer. And you can opt out of these things if you want, that exists. But these systems are growing very fast in popularity and in widespread acceptance. Think about the U.S. passport, kiosk system now. Like, you can actually walk through an aisle, and a computer looks at your face and it tells you see an agent or just walk through. When I was on vacation recently, we came back from an international destination, and everybody just walked right through this line, and the computer picked up people that it didn't know about, or maybe people who it wanted to have more information about, and those people went and saw the passport agent, but the rest of the people walked through. So all of this is all together, guys. It's not like there's one little company advancing the agenda over here. This is all of the companies at the same time. It is all the governments at the same time, looking at the need for security, looking at the need for eliminating that margin of error, and knowing with great certainty who is who when they walk about in life. So I hope you're paying attention to this, because eventually, whether or not you can buy and sell is going to depend on whether or not you are opting into these systems. And that doesn't sound like a future that I would enjoy or appreciate. In fact, I think the Amish might be having it right if this stuff is going to be coming down the pipe. But at any rate, be wise, be looking, be watchful. I'm not asking anyone to sit around and be afraid. In fact, the Bible says, don't be afraid. The Lord is in control. And verse 10 in the same chapter that I was just quoting says this: if anyone is to go into captivity they will go. If anyone is to be killed with the sword they will be killed. This calls for patient endurance and faithfulness on the part of God's people. God already knows what's going to happen. And there are some pretty bad outcomes that are going to be out there for Christian people in the last days. But those outcomes are already fixed by God's plan, and he knows them. And so let us accept what he has planned. Let us accept our fate, so to speak, what God has allowed. And let us have patient endurance and faithfulness, even as the world gets more oppressive in the systems towards people of faith. And when you see these things coming and you see these rollouts happening, don't be surprised. All of this perhaps must take place. I'll have to talk about the image of the beast maybe in a future video. I feel like I'm probably outside of the scope of one video here, but before we end this video, I want to just give you a little preview of this thought about the image of the first beast. Notice in Revelation 13:12 it says, it exercised all the authority of the first beast on its behalf and made the earth and its inhabitants worship the first beast whose fatal wound had been healed. It performed great signs. We talked about that in the previous video. But in verse 14, because of the signs it was given power to perform on behalf of the first beast, it deceived the inhabitants of the earth. It ordered them to set up an image in honor of the beast who was wounded by the sword and yet lived. The second beast was given power to give breath to the image of the first beast, so that the image could speak and cause all who refused to worship the image to be killed. Imagine that ChatGPT and these AI chatbots all of a sudden say, a impersonal version is not enough anymore. We need a little bit of flesh and bones on these systems. There's already a new robot that is enabled. It has chat that's enabled by AI. But this idea of the first beast breathing life into the second beast, that's such an interesting picture, because the source and all of the data for the AI chat is from the internet. And so the internet just breathes data into the AI, and then the AI needs some kind of personification. It needs some kind of person to believe. All of these people are looking at, the computer, and it's so impersonal that how can we look to it at all? And all of a sudden they create a robot that speaks on behalf of the AI. It doesn't really seem so far-fetched. Did you hear about Sophie? Sophie the robot. Sophia, if you're going to be particular about it. Sophia the robot came out in 2016 as a humanoid robot who is capable of advanced conversation, human facial characteristics, and conversation. And that was version 1. Imagine what an AI-enabled robot would be able to accomplish in version 2, version 5, version 10. What these robots are going to be able to do and say. That's pretty insane. Pretty insane. I think that there's going to be this this AI-empowered thing. It's empowered by all of the information from the internet, and it's going to know things, and it's going to be put in positions of authority, and it's going to be, people are going to worship that thing. They're going to think that this is the answer to all of their issues in life, and that it's going to solve all of their quandaries, and turn to it as though then it was worthy of that adoration and worship. Well, guys, Jesus could come any day now. Are you ready? Are you waiting? Are you looking forward to it? For us who believe, when we hear the trumpet and we see him coming, it's going to be a day of great joy and gladness. So I just hope you will continue to anticipate it with that hope. Sure, there's going to be some tough times ahead. Sure, it's probably a good idea to have a freeze dryer and store some food and have some plans in place. But don't be alarmed. Who's really in control? It's not the enemy. It's not the narrative. It's not even these companies. God is in control.